minutes, that's really hard for me. Okay. Okay. All right. So this presentation is just a little bit on the mass psychology of cybersecurity. My last presentation in this area was I was comparing nuclear war and cyber war, and the conclusion was that cyber war was just as bad as if, and maybe even worse, because it could do things like trigger nuclear war and also everything else under the sun. So just some things that came out of that with this presentation. All right, so we start off with a given. Cyber war can potentially be as dangerous as an all-out nuclear war, especially when control systems for nuclear launch facilities and power plants can be hacked. We've seen that already in Ukraine. We've supposedly got the Chinese having malware and really bad stuff installed already on our systems and just waiting to use it. So a logical consequence of this is that perhaps we, the nations of the world, should develop disarmament and verification strategies for cyber weapons on par with the current standards for nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. And I don't hear that much about any of that kind of thing. And it really concerns me because if nuclear weapons are being managed to some degree, why can't we manage cyber weapons that can be just as dangerous? Non-compliant entities should be punished and or contained by coalitions of the compliant countries. And that's obviously not an easy thing to do, but we should at least start trying. They started trying 50, 60 years ago with nuclear weapons, and we do have some effective standards that have kept us safe, more or less, for the last 50, 60 years. So how do the people of the world convince their governments to embark upon cyber warfare, de-escalation, and cyber weaponry disarmament? And I think a good answer to that might be that we provide cyber education to people on a consistent basis so they have no choice but to pay attention to the issue rather than allow the issue to slip away into the psychological realm of denial. These things that are so big, they're acts of God, we don't feel like we can control them. Very quickly we stuff them away and we don't think about them very much. And so when it comes time to vote, we don't say, hey, I want to vote for someone who's going to regulate cyber weapons. It never occurs to us. It's not a campaign issue anywhere now. So by keeping the possibility of cyber Armageddon alive in the minds of people, people will demand that their politicians do something about it. The education of the people will not be easy. Currently, we're shown images that demonstrate the destructive power of cyber weapons, and our brains, and they measure this with MRI images, 1 minute, show that we only think that cyber weapons, the worst ones, the worst incidents, are only about 80% as impactful in terms of the fear we feel as a small terrorist attack, right? So we have no real accurate comprehension of how dangerous cyber weapons can be. So, we really need to continuously, dramatically, impactfully educate people as to how dangerous they are, and then hopefully they will hold the politicians accountable for putting programs in place that will decrease the chance of huge, dangerous cyber attacks. I could read all this, but I'm not going to. All right, boom. That's the end. Okay.
All right. So, Caitlin, you're ready to do something, right?
Am I supposed to be on Zoom?
You can, if you want to project anything, you can. You can also do it without slides if you prefer.
I have websites.
Go ahead. Just put it on Zoom. He has to stop sharing his. I think he did stop sharing his, so I think you can share yours.
Why don't we do the online person first, then I will join Zoom.
Okay. Is the online person ready? Let's see. Someone said they wanted to do it online. Let me bring up my list. Grades coming for the first papers. Yes, they should already be in the email. Already be in the scores. Oh, look, I hear somebody's coming in. Good. Kevin Roberts. All right, and that is probably not. It was K-Rob. I think it is here.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. Let me get back to the Zoom. I should be able to see your screen, but somehow I'm not. Zoom meeting. Aha. Yes. Now I see your screen. Yeah. So go ahead.
Okay.
Actually, let me get the sound a little better. I'm going to plug in my speakers here. See if that works. Okay. Try saying something.
Okay, so my first presentation was on security and startups. So I wanted to take a look a little bit more at California Consumer Privacy Act and what that actually means and how that's going to affect startups here moving forward. Obviously, the California CCPA goes into effect at the beginning of the next month. It's going to have pretty drastic consequences for how data is to be handled for for-profit companies here moving forward. It's going to be similar in scale and scope to the EU GDPR Act. There's a lot of commotion made about that when it was being implemented, but less actual fuss at when it did go into place. There's some big similarities, but there are some larger differences at the same time. Whereas the EU was focusing on it being processed, the CCPA is actually looking much more at how data is stored and transacted at the same time. It's definitely focusing more on the tech industry as a main contributor and looking at startups and how that data is being sold and transacted upon. So I've got the legal breakdown here. The number has shifted a couple of times. I believe this is the final number, which is 50 million in gross revenue. It initially was at 25 million. It's been shifted to 50 million. This is just a legal breakdown in general, but if a company is producing 50% of its annual revenue from consumer data, which would cover most SaaS companies in the Bay Area, then they are definitely liable to the CCPA Act moving forward. Essentially, we have the rights now moving forward to know what is being collected upon us. We have the right to not have that be collected and not be charged some different price because we are not allowing the company, we're not providing our data to the service. This is also actually going to be backtracked for this past year. So companies, I don't know if they're liable to being fined, but they will be held accountable for, they will be fined if moving forward, if they're fined in the next following years, they will be held liable for the past year. Last year by itself will not actually be in effect finable. Okay, so how the CCPA actually affects startups. Because privacy is becoming a more and more key cornerstone of security and of how business is done, is more important for the technology to be, they need to be more aware of the data that's actually being collected, how it's being retained, where it's being stored.
You've got 1 minute.
But the problem is, from a business standpoint, is that privacy does slow down the rate at which the companies can scale. They need to have more well-defined systems and processes to lay that out. The steps that can ultimately be taken and should be taken for any company moving forward is all strategic seats within the organization must become familiar with the Privacy Acts and remain up to date in what is emerging in the legal body. Also know how the data is being stored, where it's being stored, and actually also where it's coming from. Ad tech companies are going to have a real hard time here moving forward. All those companies that have been selling out data, I think are going to be hit very hard with fines. It'll be interesting to see how they come out in the next couple of years. And then the CCPA should be implemented at a national level. Microsoft actually just announced in the past month that they will be doing that. It's nice to see them actually take forefront lead on that, but the expectation is for this to go into effect. Something similar to the scale and breadth of the CCPA Act at a national level here in the next couple of years, hopefully moving forward. And that's it. Thanks, guys.
All right, great. Why don't you stop sharing your screen, then Caitlin can share hers. Ah, there you are. You should be able to share yours now. Good.
I should. Whether I can is another story.
You don't see. I have high respect for your technical abilities.
Desktop 1, share screen. Oh my gosh, it works. Ignore the NASA thing. I don't know why that's there. I obviously do not work at NASA. I work for the telegraph company. So I don't have a PowerPoint presentation because I was busy hacking another Windows system. And Windows is weird. Oh my gosh. Like, you know, with Unix, you have this nice, you know, philosophy and structure, and everything's a file, and everything's separated. With Windows, everything's connected. I never know how to start. And so I kind of want to give everyone the tools that I use on pretty much every Windows hack. Because if someone told me this when I started out, it would have saved me so much time. So the first thing are the nmap scripts. Like anytime you come up with a weird service, run an nmap script on it. Like LDAP, this is for Microsoft SQL. You have like Samba scripts. These scripts will give you all the information you need to know what's running on those services. And then next, certutil. Certutil is a wonderful program on every Windows system. You can use it to download certificates, data looking like certificates, or really any file. I use it all the time. I'm trying to download like a virus onto a Windows system that I'm on. You can also use it for like man-in-the-middle attacks. It's fantastic. The other one is bitsadmin, background intelligence agents. Same thing, use it to download stuff. But what's really cool about this is that it will download from a service. So it doesn't say bitsadmin is running, it says SVC host is connecting to a website. It just gets past every firewall you can imagine. It's amazing. Impacket is a quote-unquote library for Python. Forget all that. Go into the documentations, go into the examples. It will have binaries for you to run against pretty much any Windows service. You will. I use that anytime I'm getting onto the system. And similar to that, there is CrackMapExec, which is the same thing. It takes Impacket and organizes it a little bit. So you have, for example, logged in. You can enumerate users, domains, etc. CrackMapExec. And I recommend getting it from GitHub, and don't use the one that's installed with Kali. I went out of date. And of course, but with Kali, you also have, you know, SMB tools, smbclient, smbmap. Those are always useful. And then Metasploit. I recommend Metasploit not for one thing alone, the exploit suggester. Go to post, modules, exploit suggester. That'll tell you exactly all the weaknesses that are on the local machine. So once you're on there, run that local exploit suggester through Metasploit. You will likely get administrator that way. If not, there's always the run as command, which is essentially sudo for Windows. Like, why didn't I know about this until a few months ago? And of course, there's procdump and the sysinternals tools, which if you get a shell, download those immediately. And then there's, if you want to hide stuff, you can use alternate data streams. So essentially what you can do is you can make a file with extra data hidden behind it. Oh, it's so useful for hiding viruses. And it's built into Windows. You can see here there's, you know, echo, you know, ads to test.txt colon hidden.txt. It'll show up as test.exe with nothing in it, but there's a hidden file behind it. Oh, awesome, awesome, awesome. And of course, there's evil-winrm. So Windows has remote management. And if you can get the password to that, this will just give you a shell. PowerShell, right up. That's all you need. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because if someone told me these things, that would have saved me so much time going through this. Yes. The list again. So
yeah,
I can. Ooh, let me stop sharing now.
Yeah.
Stop sharing. There we go.
I
Those
think
are
I'm just
all
going to stop the recording.
my favorite Windows.
That's great.